Hi, everyone, and welcome to Leave Loud, the Royal Family Edition. I am your host, Henny. I am the Vice President of the Witness, a Black Christian collective, and host of Combing the Roots with Henny, a podcast that should hopefully be returning in April. So that's somewhat exciting. But this isn't about me. This is about the person who is next to me on your screen. This is, she's like, what? What is it about? But I want to not really introduce you. She doesn't need an introduction. Y'all, this is Kristina Button. She is I about said the host of Black Women Plant Seeds, my bad. She is the person who writes the Black Women Plant Seeds column that just released in March. The first column of that, the first article is so good. I encourage you to go on the Witness BCC blog and read it. It's wonderful. She also has a page that's of the same title, Black Women Plant Seeds. Kristina, it is so good. It's so good to be here and to talk about this royal family. You got anything to say, fam? Not about the family, but just in general. We'll get to that in a second.
I'm so excited to be here. So thankful to be able to write words and be giving a space. Yeah, I'm excited for tonight.
Yeah, Kristina is here, and I am excited to have this conversation with Kristina. Kristina is one of my very good and very dear friends, and we've already talked about this a little bit behind the scenes, but this is actually the first time that we've really, I think, gotten in depth. We kind of shared some of our comments with one another initially after it happened. But what I'm talking about is this whole deal with Meghan Markle and Harry and Prince Harry. It's been all over the news. And so we felt like it was good to do a Facebook Live about this event because it ties in with a content focus that we have at The Witness that we will be having for the next several months. And that's called Leave Loud. The idea behind Leave Loud is that Black people are often a part of toxic institutions where whiteness does a lot of toxic stuff. White people wild out and they do things that cause harm to us, and specifically in the church. I think a lot of us who are here on this broadcast tonight are here because we are or were connected in some way to Christianity, and a lot of Black folks have experienced a lot of harm in white church institutions. Well, our sister, Meghan Markle, the Duchess of Sussex, she too has left loud. She and Prince Harry, if you don't know, they were part of the British royal family, and then they decided to leave. And they did an interview with Oprah this past Sunday, and they left the royal family, and they left the royal family loud. So Kristina, how did you watch the interview whenever it was live?
Yes, I did. I was gearing up for it, and I made sure like everything was straight in my house so I could sit down and like enjoy it. But I say enjoy before knowing how triggering it was gonna be. Like I was legit not ready for what. Whew, like it's taken me like all week to like process. I mean, I've been processing all week. Um, but yeah, I mean, it didn't really come as a surprise as, you know, that the monarchy has a racist background, but the depth of what she went into, that was a part that I was not ready for. So yeah.
Yeah, whenever I watched it, like you said, I was not ready at all whatsoever. I am a little bit of a royal watcher. I'm kind of ashamed to admit that. I mean, it's kind of weird. Like I understand the space that we're in. I understand colonialism and imperialism and how all of that is toxic. And I'm not glorifying that in any means. But I think that the British royal family is very interesting. The institution is very interesting. The implications and everything are very interesting. And so it's something that I have been interested in really since, I mean, I remember whenever I don't know why I was even like watching any of this, but my family used to watch Inside Edition every night. And so like I know like about Charles and Diana's divorce and how, I mean, I was like 7 and 8 years old at the time, so I didn't quite get all of it, but it was something that I was really interested in because it was like this saga of something that was happening, and it was like the soap operas that my mom used to watch on TV. It's like that's what it felt like. And so then also Prince Harry is only a year older than I am. So I'm like, he like these kids and stuff are involved in his kids and they're my age. So I just have always been interested in the family. I remember whenever Princess Diana was killed, I remember all of that. I just have always kind of watched them. And so I wanted to sit down and watch this interview. And I knew that I'm going to call her Princess Meghan because to me she's a princess and that's just what it is. And I know that that's not her actual title, and that I don't even know if she doesn't really have a title anymore. But the Duchess of Sussex, I understand that that's not really her real title, but she's Princess Meghan to me. And so I had been watching Princess Meghan. I watched their wedding. I was just, I could see, because I'm enough of a royal watcher that I knew how they treated Kate Middleton. Like I knew how they treated Princess Kate. And so I was immediately aware of some of the differences and some of the different things like that. And so whenever she brought that type of stuff up, that wasn't news to me because that wasn't news to me because I had watched it happen. And for whatever reason, like, because I guess Facebook knows that I'm a little bit of a royal watcher, and I would get those articles in my newsfeed and would see and be like, they're treating her completely different than they treated Kate. But I was shook and shocked, and we'll get to some of that in a moment. But you said, Kristina, that you also weren't ready. So was there, and I know that you're also a little bit of a royal watcher because we both watched The Crown and talk about The Crown, but what was the moment for you?
Wow. Well, definitely the part where she mentioned the suicide ideation. Like I was just like blown away by that. And then I was like sitting there like doing the math in my head, and then they showed a picture of her later on where she was like, yes, I was having these thoughts while I was pregnant. And I was like, that's huge. Like for like having a baby is like the happiest time of your life. And the level of racial trauma she was detailing, um, it just seems so horrific that during the happiest time of her life that she was contemplating suicide while she was carrying a life herself. That part was, whew, I was like, wow. Yeah, that was a big deal. That was a super jarring part for me. So yeah.
I was good until, so the thing that there was a lot that made me mad. There was a lot, like the whole time, like I was watching it with my husband, and there were parts like it would go on commercial break, and like I would just start going off about like whatever, or there'd be sometimes stuff would be happening like, oh my gosh, like this is what this was, whatever. And so I had to, because he was putting the kids to bed, and so I had to catch him up on like the first 20 minutes or so, and like I'm just going off or whatever about all of this. So there was a lot that made me angry, but honestly, like the moment for me, and I don't even know why it was such a big moment for me. But whenever they started talking about, whenever Prince Harry started talking about how Tyler Perry took them in and paid their rent, or to pay the rent, paid for their security detail. Like there was something about that because that came like later in the interview, because Prince Harry was like his part was toward the end, and Lord, we'll talk about Harry here in a minute, but anyway, but that was toward the end, and maybe it was just like the compounding of hearing of all these different traumas and all these different harms that she had experienced. But there was just something about him talking about how Tyler Perry, whenever they had to flee from Canada, because they fled Canada because the royal family was based, or the institution or whatever was like, yeah, we're not going to give you security detail anymore. So like not even for Prince Harry, who had a security detail his whole entire life, they took it all away. So, and then they're getting death threats, they're getting terrible letters and everything. So they had to leave Canada and come to the United States. And so then Tyler Perry takes them into his home, into, you know, his massive home. He probably didn't even live, because Tyler Perry's, you know, rich or whatever, but pays for a security detail. And that moment, like, I just started crying. I just broke down and started crying. And I looked at my husband and I was like, the only people that take care of Black people is Black people. Like, you know, this man, like a prince, a prince, his wife can't even, so his wife, you know, maybe who wasn't maybe entitled to it, maybe not, but his wife and his son, okay, they don't have the titles or whatever, but like this person who's had security detail his whole life doesn't even get a security detail, and he can't even protect his family. And you talk about like protecting Black women and stuff like that, and like we could talk about Tyler Perry, and like I'm not shedding tears like over Tyler Perry specifically. I mean, it could have been anybody. I mean, it could have been Oprah, it could have been Beyonce and Jay-Z, it could have been Spike Lee, it could have been Gabrielle Union, like I don't know, like, but it's just something that like sometimes all Black people have is us. And like, I mean, I know, yeah, like they're like Tyler Perry also gave money to people who are problematic, but there was just something about that moment that just really like kind of broke me, because it's just like, oh my gosh, this woman is abused by this institution. Her child is enduring the secondhand trauma of being abused by this institution, and then it's a Black man that gets them on their feet, and it's a Black woman that provides the platform for them to be able to tell their story. And that was just too much for me.
Yeah, the discussing of the no title and the no protection, like just the double standard of I mean, when I'm listening to you saying, you know, like they don't have a title, it's almost like they had a title, but they literally took it from them, and they're not affording them the same privileges that other people in the family have. And it's just like, and they said, we still don't have an answer for it. I think he said change of status or something like that. And he's like, is the change of status have to do with security issues? And they were like, no, just change of status with you guys. And which I find is a super lame reason. You know, I think they knew what they were doing the whole time. I think they had a plan to push them out from the get-go, and they were just biding their time to put the plan in process. So yeah, it's a mess.
Oh my gosh, that part was such a mess, girl. Like, that was really triggering. And that was really triggering for me, like, in thinking about the church, where ministry is my vocation. Actually, this is, I guess I still am in ministry, working for the Witness, but ministry is my vocation. I've been in vocational ministry now for, I don't even know how many years. I probably don't want to think of how many years I've been in vocational ministry, because then I would start to feel very old. Not that there's anything wrong with being old, but it's just like, wow, I've been around for a long time. But I have had very similar experiences in the church, where it's like you put in all the labor, you do all the work, but then you don't get the titles, you don't get the benefits. And no, I understand. And I don't work for titles, I don't work for benefits. That's not what I'm saying. And I understand too that there's an element in ministry where, yeah, you're volunteering. But there's something especially insidious about when there is something that multiple people have had and have done for years in an institution. And they've done it for years, and they've always done it that way, and even will pride themselves on doing it that way.
Yep.
And then as soon as a Black person, they're not even doing it, right? They're not even in the position. But as soon as it looks like we could possibly maybe be a threat, or maybe even like look in the general direction of the thing, then it's like, oh, well, we gotta change. We gotta tighten up these rules. We gotta whatever. We got well, So like one of the things that killed me is that they were like, well, Prince Charles was moving toward a slimmed down monarchy. Okay, so a slimmed down monarchy, and I understand that like William's kids, they are entitled to be the prince and princesses of Wales probably whenever William is king, or I forget how all that works, but I get, because I mean usually I think it's the firstborn that's the Prince of Wales, but then Harry and William were also the Prince of Wales. It was Harry, Prince of Wales, before he became the Duke of Sussex. So I'm sure that they all get to be all of that, and I get that. But there was just something that was really weird. Like, why would you change it all of a sudden? You want a slim down monarchy when you have a black grandson. You couldn't say, okay, well, in this many generations, we're gonna like we want to move toward this. So my great grandchildren might not have this, or my great grandchildren might not have this. But there's something that's just like that just doesn't smell right. What do you think about that, Kristina?
It's petty because we already know with William and Kate's kids that it's gonna be like whatever line Harry's kids would even be in. So we know that's not the issue. We started to gaslight ourselves like, oh hey, maybe it's my personality, or maybe, you know what I mean? Like maybe I didn't do something right. But like at the end of the day, like it boils down to the fact that she's a biracial Black woman and her mother is a Black woman, and you know what I'm saying? It all boils down to the race. So it's just like, nah, we good with you over there, but not over here. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that just gets me, because that's always the way it is. Like I said, in the church, I've had that experience. Oh, your predecessor in this position got this, and this, but now we're changing the position, we're changing this, we're doing that, we're whatever, and it's like, huh, that is really, really suspect, but okay. But you mentioned Meghan and her heritage of having a Black mother. Something I was listening to the news. I think I have a bunch of news podcasts like just lined up. I have I really like the really, really short news things. Like I have like NPR, I have The Economist, I even have one that's like Fox News or whatever, just like to get different perspectives. And so I believe it was Fox News, and in the little news minute that they have, they talked about Meghan's dad, who is white. Mm-hmm. And he said something basically to the effect of, oh, well, like, I know that the British royal family isn't racist. Isn't that like, your whiteness is like you're siding against your own child who said that she was feeling suicidal? Decide with whiteness. That's a trip. That's true. Had you heard about that, Kristina?
I did not hear that. That's the first time.
That's the first time that you heard that. Oh my gosh. Yes, it was wild that whiteness would side with their own child who this institution was killing her.
Wow, so this was like a recent,
this was like like 2 or 3 days ago. Wow. This was like Monday or Tuesday that he said that, and her sister also had like come out with something too, and had come out and was like talking about how the royal family isn't racist. So that killed me. So then the other thing that killed me is, I think it was day before yesterday, Prince William was like,
yes,
the royal family isn't racist. So Kristina, why do you think that white people have just flocked in? Because it's not just the royal family, it's not just Meghan's family, it's white people just in general. Not that I want to focus on them or center them, but I feel like that I'm going somewhere with this. I feel like that this is part of the conversation here, because we have these very drastic and different responses to this. So what do you think motivates that response there?
Whiteness is gonna protect whiteness, boy. I tell you what, it don't matter if you got a black biracial daughter, it's still gonna, like, there's no benefit for her dad to, like, he has no desire to reconcile with her. And for him to even say that after she just went on national TV and said, racial trauma caused me to feel like I needed to have suicidal thoughts. Like, oh my word. Oof, oh my word. And William, seeing the clip of William, I think yesterday, saying that, of course, we're not a racist family. Like, yet you have a perfectly positioned Black woman standing next to you as you say that. Like, and just tokenizing the Black people around them is just, oh my word. Yeah, I was baffled at, not surprised, of course. I mean, we're not surprised. I think the thing I think I've read some comments online this week just saying, why are we surprised about this? But I think it's the affirmation of the truth that we already know that's jarring to us, right? Um, it's like, we know this to be true, but to hear the affirmation of it is just, it's jarring to us. So whiteness is gonna do what it does, and it's gonna pretend that they had nothing to do. And then you didn't mention the Queen's letter that said there's varying viewpoints to the interview. there's
Oh my goodness.
there's varying viewpoints, like, we don't remember all the racial trauma we caused, like
I'm
not,
like, was
no,
you not there?
no
Were you not
concern, no
there?
concern whatsoever. So yeah, like, just, oh man, just the denial, just the, I mean, all the textbook stuff that we see, even in when we have been in white institutions, white churches, and stuff like that, just very textbook. Like, everything we've seen this week from the family has been textbook, from the Queen's letter, from pretending like nothing happened. Um, yeah, I mean, yes, it's been a mess. So yeah.
It has been a whole entire mess. I don't want to talk about them for too much awful long here, but there are a couple of things that I have to get off my chest here with this. So first of all these statements from the royal family that have basically been like, well, we don't recall that there's racism. I'm like, are you not part of are you not part of their family? Are you not the people that they were talking about? So how can you so like why is it all of a sudden that there's different viewpoints, there's different perspectives, which we know that is what happens. That's exactly what happens all the time. Is somebody does something racist, somebody does a racism, and then they're called on their racism, and then it becomes, well, there's two sides to every story. Well, it wasn't really this, it was that. Or, well, that's not what I meant. Well, I'm sorry if you perceived it that way. And that brings me in a roundabout way to the next thing that kind of irked me about, back to the interview point. So we were talking a little bit about some of the aftermath of the interview. But whenever she was talking, wherever she was spilled, there was so much tea that was spilled in that interview, honey. But anyway, but whenever she talked about Princess Kate, so there are two things that I want to address: the whiteness issue of it, but then I want to get the focus back on us here for a second, because you probably know where I'm going. But with the whiteness part of it, I thought it was very interesting how, first of all, the story that gets out to the tabloids. So if you don't know what Princess Meghan has said, or if you don't know what had happened, what I'm referring to is the British tabloids had reported that Princess Meghan, 6 months after they were married, 6 months after Harry and Meghan were married, it hits the British tabloids that Meghan made Princess Kate cry. And because of the wedding. So this narrative was all like built around that, like Meghan was some sort of bridezilla, and it was playing into like this larger narrative that Meghan is a bully and blah 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 blah. And first of all, I'm like, okay, she's a bully. Number one, first of all, do you not know, there's differences between American culture and British culture, and Americans tend to culturally, just as a culture, be a little bit more direct than British people. But then the other aspect of that too is like, have y'all never interacted with Black women before? Like, I mean, Meghan was raised by a Black mama, and I'm just sitting here like, have y'all have y'all never we just, as a culture, we just tend to be very direct with things. And so, but that's besides the point. But it hits the tabloid that Princess Meghan had made Kate cry. Mm. So then Kate or Meghan is in an interview with Oprah and is like, well, actually, it was she was spilling that tea, fam. It was called the Boston Tea Party because she was out here throwing it in the harbor. But anyway, so she's like that. It was actually the opposite that happened. And so Oprah's like, oh, really? What happened? And so Meghan wouldn't go into what happened, but she was like, actually, Kate made me cry. She apologized for it. She sent me flowers, but she actually made me cry before my wedding over something with the Flower Girls is what the issue. Something with the Flower Girls. How are you gonna make a woman cry over some dang Flower Girls at her own wedding? What? Why was Kate even? I have so many questions about this. There are so many questions that I need answered about this, because like, how you gonna be the future sister-in-law and has some sort of input about, I don't know if there's protocol because she's, gonna be the Princess of Wales. I have no idea what the deal is. But how you gonna make somebody cry over a Flower Girl dress, number one? But then number two, how does this story get flipped around to where it's that's like Darvo, fam, where the defender, where the person who has been hurt is like the roles get reversed between victim and offender. Like, how does that even happen? And so the thing that got me with all this, so first of all, I mean, classic just whiteness, just classic, like, it becomes, the Black woman becomes the aggressor in every situation. Like, in every situation, a white woman's tears are just whatever. But it's like the white woman's tears didn't even exist, number one. Like, that's what's killing me, is that she actually made somebody else cry. But somehow in the retelling it becomes Meghan. But the part that got me was how protective Meghan still was of Kate. And she would not, she was like, well, I mean, on the surface, like, I get it. Mm-hmm. She apologized for it. Meghan had forgiven her for it. It's water under the bridge as far as they're concerned. So I get it. Why keep crap rolling? I understand that on that level. Hey, you did something to me. I forgave you for it. You know what? It's water under the bridge. We ain't got to rehash it. We ain't got to talk about it. But on the other hand, mm-hmm. this woman made her cry near her wedding. Made her cry about something about her wedding. Now, I mean, I don't remember. I got married 16 years ago. I don't think I cried about anything. I was like, I mean, I was about to say I barely showed up that day. That would imply something different. I mean, I was happy to be there. It was a good thing, but I was just not like, I was like, okay, I don't care about flowers, whatever, like whatever. I'm just here. I'm just here so I don't get fined. I love my husband. I really do. But that was both of our attitudes about it, which is like, yeah, we're doing this, but it's whatever. But anyway, like, but you made somebody cry. You made somebody cry, fam. Mm-hmm. But the thing that she felt the need to protect her, I could not get past that.
Yeah. I was trying to think of like the parallels of that situation, like when we're in churches and white church spaces and something happened and the situation got flipped where the other person got protected, but I, as the Black woman, got villainized for it. I mean, oof. And then to go back to the Kate and Meghan situation, like, there were people in the family, like Meghan has said, like, that knew what actually happened, but they would not use their power privilege to get the right story out to prevent her from continuing to be the villain in this story. So it's just, I don't know. For me, I'm just kind of like, Meghan said that she said she was sorry and she sent her flowers. And I'm just like, ugh, um, was that manipulated? You know what I mean? Was it, I have to forgive kind of thing? I don't know. I don't know. Yeah, that was a lot. That was a lot.
It really it was a lot for me too. And I mean I really don't know. We don't know why
Yeah.
Megan responded the way that she responded. We don't know the reaction, why she had the reaction that she had. But I feel like that there's something I can speak from my own experience where even thinking about in scenarios that I've been in the church,
Mm-hmm.
where for a long time I felt like I had to protect certain people,
Mm-hmm.
people who had done harm to me, and had done and who had done who they were in the wrong. But then in the retelling of it, in the recounting of it, in the even sometimes like you relive the situation, feeling so much pressure not to talk about it. So like for example, one example in my own life, there was one time many years ago I was a youth worker at a church. I think I was still even in college at this point. And so um I was pretty good friends with the youth. I mean, I worked in the youth ministry, and the youth pastor was my mentor, and I was good friends with the youth pastor's wife. And so we we're pretty close and whatever. And so I say all of that because that's just some of the context for our relationship. And like I babysat their kids, like everything. And so there was a point when we had a girls Bible study. Like I cringe, like, but anyway, that's a whole different discussion. But we had like this girls Bible study during church. And so there's a few weeks where we just had, it was all high school girls, I think, that we did. And so we were both leading this study and everything. And so I don't remember really any of why this was happening or what was going on, but I remember being in a room full of, I was maybe 21 years old. I'm in this room full of girls, and the youth pastor's wife was significantly older than me, and I don't remember why,
Mm-hmm.
but I remember at one point she was like making faces, was like trying to make the girls laugh or whatever. And so like she turned her lips like inside out, and it's like I can't do it, but like she was able to turn them like inside out and like have them like close at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
And so like she said like, oh, oh, my lips look like Allie's. And like, and so at the same time, one of the girls in the room said, wow, your mouth looks like a monkey. So this is being said this is being said at literally the same time. So like the girl who was saying made the monkey comment wasn't they were talking both at the same time. But the way that it sounded is it's in stereo, so you could hear both people saying it at the same time. So then like everybody stops for a second, and I remember the girl like looked at me, and then everybody else is looking at me, and the youth pastor's wife is looking at me, and like nobody's saying like nobody's saying anything, and then everybody starts laughing.
Wow.
And so it was like this moment. So like I'm making like the beat like way longer than what it was. It was like they both said it at the same time. The girl kind of looks at me, and everybody starts laughing, is like looking at me and starts laughing. And I remember I was so humiliated in that moment. And I was just like, I was so entirely humiliated by that. And but like it hurt. Like it really, really, really hurt me. And so I did not talk about that for years.
Mm-hmm.
Like my husband didn't even know that happened because because I carried so much shame I mean, it wasn't, the shame wasn't mine, but there was just something about that situation. And so, like, so there was not even like the situational, first of all, that she did that anyway was like horrible.
Right.
Like, let's just be real. Like, that was like, the act in itself was horrible, but it was compounded by the monkey comment.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm just sitting here like, oh my gosh, like this is bad. She never said anything about it. Like never said anything afterward, never apologized. It was just like whatever. And so it was one of those situations, because of the power dynamic in the situation, where I did not confront her about it, because it's like because she was my friend. And so, like, you're afraid of somehow hurting the relationship or hurting, like, there's so many things. And so for years, like, I never said anything about that. And I remember the last thing I'll say about this is, like, I think it was a Kimini, or it was either a Kimini or maybe like the Truth's Table or something like that. They years and years and years ago had like a thread or something on Twitter where, like, people, like, they were inviting people to, like, share different things. And I remember, like, I could not even type the words on Twitter. Like, I wrote it in a note and screenshotted the note and was like, this is something that happened to me, and this was terrible. And then there were, because I think that's some of it too, is like, I was afraid that people wouldn't see that situation as being as terrible as it was. I recognize how terrible the situation was. I think anybody in their right mind who hears that story should be horrified. But for years, I thought, well, maybe I'm blowing it out of proportion. Like, maybe it wasn't really, like, I mean, I have full lips, so maybe that wasn't, like, whatever. The girl just said monkey, like, she wasn't she wasn't really trying to whatever. And for years, like, I made that about myself. Like, I made that about myself, in the sense of, like, oh, this is something that I did, that I'm doing wrong, by feeling hurt by the situation. So I can't help but wonder if, like, with Kate, or with the situation with Kate and Meghan, if if maybe it's a similar thing, that even though it's forgiven, it's water under the bridge, it's whatever, but then, like, at the same time, to talk about the situation is difficult, and would make you, and you feel like, well, if I talk about what my sister-in-law said to me before my wedding, yeah, I've forgiven her for it, but then, like, I'm gonna look like the bad person. And I don't know, and we don't have, any real way of knowing that. But it's something that's still just, it's hurt me. It's made me, it's made, and that moment in that interview was something that was so difficult. So we've talked about it a little bit. We've brought it around to the church a little bit, but I want to take this last little bit to talk specifically to and about the church. So with Meghan and Harry leaving this toxic white institution, that's what the royal family is. I mean, it's based, as fun as it is to watch all these rich white people kind of rich white people, have big weddings and whatever. I want to keep talking about the root system of some of this, but maybe that's why that is why my podcast is called Combing the Roots. We need to figure out, like, we need to figure out a name for, like, these types of things. Like, it's like, I was thinking, like, what could I call this? Can I call this, like, planting the women, or combing the seeds, Black women comb the roots, whatever. But anyway, I digress. But so I want to acknowledge the toxicity of what the royal family represents.
Yeah.
But I think that there are some very real implications in this discussion for this larger Leave Loud focus that we've been having. Jamar Tisby told his story. If you haven't listened to it, go back and listen to the episode of Pass the Mic from this week. Jamar shares his story. He goes in depth. He names names. He tells it all. This week is going to be Tyler Burns is taking his turn, and he is going to share his story, his Leave Loud story. And in 2 weeks, I'm actually going to be sharing my story. And so that's going to be really, really interesting. That's going to be a whole scene. But I feel like that there are some larger implications and some larger takeaways, because in a lot of ways, the royal family, there are mirrors there. There are types and shadows, if you will, to kind of sound like a person that's talking about the Bible or whatever. There's types and shadows of the church, and mostly what I see with that, um, some of the implications there, mostly I think in terms of just like power and how power is wielded, and how there's hierarchies and there's protocols and there's ways of doing things. And one of the things that's even as obvious to me is one of those things that if you're in a church situation, you're in, and if you're out, you're out. But what, Kristina, do you think are some of the takeaways for us from this whole thing that Meghan went through? What do you think are some takeaways for us in the church?
Um, yeah, just how one of the things that they said towards the end is just, and what the Witness has done is making space for us to be able to tell our stories. Us Black Christians who have been in white church spaces, who have felt and have been silenced. Um, that now we have a space within the Witness to not only hear Jamar's testimony, but also Tyler's testimony coming up, and then also yours, of just what it was like to be a part of a toxic environment, and what it looks like to be able to be liberated in actually testifying what the experience was in the church. Yeah, I mean, there's so many things that I saw. You shared your own story just a second ago about the experience you had at this young women's Bible study group. And just, when I was watching Meghan, I just went through so many range of emotions, and I was just like, why is she protecting her? Like, why? Like, say it, name names. And so, of course, as the interview went on, um, they started to open up a little bit. Like, it was like, a little bit of a pull, like, all right, we got you there. So, but yeah, I think it goes back to just what you were saying, is just finding ourselves in the situations where we have been the ones to attempt to protect certain people or even certain institutions. And just listening to Jamar's Leave Loud testimony, that was liberating to hear him name the names of the places and the people who caused harm. And so, for me, thinking about, I'm sitting there thinking like, why is she protecting them? But it's a process. Like this being in a toxic environment is a process. And so you have to have grace for people when they're kind of going through this deconstructing process. So maybe it's like, and you can clearly see that she was still in process. Both of them, her and Harry, were still in process. Like, you could tell they had done like a lot of internal work, but they were also kind of still in process. And that's the other thing that we see, right? As we leave these institutions and leave white toxic churches, how it's our own personal journey of, hey, like, I took the step of leaving, but now I have to go through the process of just processing what happened to me, grieving what happened to me, lamenting what happened to me, because while I was in this space, I wasn't allowed to grieve. I wasn't allowed to lament. And so now that I'm out of it, now it's time for that grief and the lament and the healing to happen. And that's what you can see in, Meghan and Harry's story, is that now they're out of that toxic space. They're living in California, you know what I'm saying? And now they could, start the process of healing. So, and that's what we see ourselves in, like, man, just being in COVID, and just how hard COVID was on everyone and still is on everyone. Seeing a lot of friends embracing therapy and stuff like that, and so that's definitely a part of the healing process. But yeah, um, being able to fully process with the therapist and have the tools to just release that trauma, that you've been through. So yeah.
Yeah, I think that is really helpful in talking about going to a therapist,
Mhm,
talking about taking care of yourself,
mhm,
recognizing that this is a journey.
mhm,
And I really liked what you said about being in process, because I think that it would be very easy for those of us who are justice minded to look at their situation, to look at Meghan even, and to kind of critique and be like, well, she knew what she was getting into, or what. And there's a lot of things that we there are a lot of things, a lot of hot takes and stuff that we haven't even gotten into yet. But recognizing that everyone is in a process, and really, whenever you are leaving toxic whiteness, there is an aspect of deconstruction
yeah.
that you have to do. Now, I know people are, whenever I say deconstruction, I'm not talking about the whole conversation that people are talking about, like, ooh, deconstructing their faith, ooh, like whatever. And I'm not belittling that journey that people are going on. I'm just saying that that's not what I'm talking about. Like, I think that I will say this, and this isn't shade, but the deconstruction journey, I really feel like, is something that is a function of white privilege. To be able to be like, oh, to have to deconstruct that all you had to do was deconstruct your faith, where a lot of people have to go through the process of decolonizing. And I'm not saying that there aren't things that um, I'm not saying that there aren't things that aren't harmful. I think especially in evangelicalism, that there aren't things like purity culture and whatever that people have got to get away from. So don't get me wrong on that. But I think that there's an element of, whenever I say deconstruction, what I mean is that we have to look at the situation,
Mhm,
we have to review the situation.
yeah.
We have to, it's almost like going over it precept upon precept and line upon line in some ways.
Mhm,
And even trying to convince ourselves that we're not wrong. And so you tie faith up in with that too. So you tie, because a lot of times these white churches will bind our consciences to being part of their institution. And sometimes it's subtle little things like, well, we're doing God's mission in the city. Well, we're helping this or that, or, well, you want to be in a Bible believing church, and all this other type of stuff. And so people there are these little kind of buzzwords that people use that tie your conscience to being part of that institution. So then sometimes even leaving that institution can be tantamount to leaving God.
mhm,
And so when we divest from those institutions, a lot of us have to do the work of thinking through that, and thinking through what that means for our faith. That's not everybody's journey. That I think that for me personally, my journey has been in, and I'm not going to spill a whole lot of my story right here right now, because you'll have to listen to the podcast in 2 weeks, listen to Pastor Mark in 2 weeks anyway, to get some of the nitty gritty of it. But part of my journey has been because I was in some situations where not only was the situation toxic, so not only was, like, not only was there, well, there's white supremacy, there's racism, there's this in this context, but I was also dealing with leaders that were toxic. And so, like beyond, like, that were toxic, period. So whether black, white, or whatever, they were toxic, period. And so then, you add the added layer of race on it, where then there are things about myself that I believed. and things about myself, lies about myself that I believed, and that I had to deconstruct, and things that I had to go through and be like, well, was this really a problem? Am I really doing this? And having to be able to see, having to be able to have the discernment to see that, you know what, the shame of this situation is not mine to bear. The difficulties that were presented in this situation, I did not cause those things. I did not cause the strife. I did not sever the relationship. I did not do this. I am not like breaking fellowship or whatever it is. But it's these people and this situation. And so I think that there's a work that we are. So going back to the point of what you said in process, is that I think that different people are at different points in that process. And something that I've really been, and I don't have the answers on, but I've really been wrestling with is, what are the implications for the people who remain in those places? Because I've left an institution that, and there were still, I was among the first to leave loudly. And there were still some people that were left there. And I think that there still are people that are left there that I've wondered, and I realize that they're at a different place, that they're at a different part in their journey. But I think about the implications of that. And so we see Harry and Meghan, they're talking about the situation. She's talking through it, and she's clearly, you know, not there yet. So I think that there is an element of where we have to recognize with one another that sometimes whenever we're fresh out the toxic institution, that we don't have it. We don't have all the language to express what happened to us. We don't have all the paradigms to understand because I feel like that there's aspects of the racism that the Sussexes experienced that I don't think that were apparent to me, that I wonder if they realize. And I see that with people leaving toxic white church institutions, where there are levels of trauma that people have to process through and have to walk through.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, your question about what are the implications for people remaining in those spaces, especially Black Christians. Yeah, what's the implications for them? And then also, like, what are the implications for us as we are leaving, exiting ourselves, but then we look back and we see our Black brothers and sisters still in that toxic space, you know what I mean? And yeah, that's painful to watch. You know what I mean? It's like you got out, but there's some other folks that need to get out too. And you know, you can plant the seed with them, but you know, they got to be able to make that decision for themselves to flee that toxic environment as well. Yeah, the implications is just that if we don't get free, we will continue to be traumatized and tokenized, and that's the heartbreaking part about it. You know, is, you know, you can bear witness to your own story, but bearing witness to the bondage of our brothers and sisters still remaining in these toxic church white spaces is devastating. So yeah.
You said something that I really think is important. You talked about how for you it was very good and healing to hear Jamar's story.
Mm.
And so that's something that I want to talk about for just a minute, because I think that for me, that's what Leave Loud is about. That's whenever we talked about some of this, having this content focus. I know that Jamar and Tyler talked about a little bit on Pass the Mic. They might talk about it a little bit more this week. But I also want to talk about it because the three of us, whenever I believe that they talked about this on Jamar's episode of Pass the Mic, or at some point they might have talked about it on Instagram Live. I can't remember. I've been hearing Jamar and Tyler talk like a lot lately, so I can't remember. So I'm sorry that I can't remember where. But this summer the three of us were talking, and Jamar was just like, they talk about leaving these institutions quietly, but we need to leave loud. And so we're just sitting here, and we're talking, and I'm like, yes, that is so true. And hashtag leave loud. And something that I realized almost immediately with this was, this is about storytelling.
Yeah.
This is about this leaving loud is about telling stories. We overcome by the blood of the Lamb and the word of our testimony. That I'm taking that verse a little bit out of context and misquoting it, but I'm more, I guess, quoting it in an applicational type way. But we overcome by sharing our testimonies, and for me, that's the real power of something like Leave Loud. And so I think that works two ways. So I think that for Princess Meghan, telling her story, speaking her truth when other people were going to lie on her, when other people were going to make their departure seem like it was something that it wasn't, for her to be able to sit there with Oprah and to speak her truth. Mm-hmm. I think that there's something that I hope that after that, even though there's been a lot of backlash and everything else, I really hope that she felt empowered after that. Mm-hmm. Because in the midst of everything with the Leave Loud, with the Leave Loud content focus and everything here, and knowing, and thinking about my own story, I didn't actually know I was going to tell my story until Tyler was like, "Hey, I knew I was going to be on Pass the Mic, but I didn't know that I was telling my story." At the time, Tyler did a sneaky on me. He was like, "Oh yeah, you're telling your story." But anyway, I'm picking on Tyler now. But anyway, just thinking about my own story in light of this, yeah. I was like, "Oh man, like this is difficult." Like, I know that what she's doing is so difficult. Mm-hmm. And yet I feel so empowered by it. And so I hope she feels empowered by it, because I feel empowered by it. Yeah. And so I think about Leave Loud, and I want for people to feel empowered by hearing these stories, and for them to feel empowered by being able to tell their stories. And so, Kristina, what do you think about some of that power in storytelling? And is that something that resonates with you, or story something that resonates with you? What do you think is the value in this Leave Loud?
Yeah. Yes, it deeply resonates, because what it actually reminds me of is oral history from our ancestors. It reminds me of the oral history of our eldest member of our family, the eldest Black member of our family. And I don't know about y'all, but I have, on certain sides of my family, I have certain Black elders who very much so are willing to tell the oral history of my family. And then there's other parts of my family where it's extremely excuse me, painful. Like, folks don't want to bring up the oral history at all. And me as a young person, I'm like, please, like, I just want to know, like, I just want to know my history. I just want to know, like, from your words, from your mouth, like, if there's anything that you can detail about, your childhood. And then once you start asking them questions about their childhood, you hope they open up to more. But yeah, I lament that, because I feel like, even though I know it's hard, I feel like, to my elders who do have a hard time sharing those deep traumatic stories, which I totally understand, I feel like, I want to tell them, and I feel like they would have experienced so much liberation if they released it, and so the tie for me there is the Witness compiling these oral history stories of our Leave Loud experience, what it was like for us to be inside white church spaces, white institutions, and to flee from that, and to um, just find liberation in, you know, in your Black dignity. Because when you were in those institutions, your Blackness was on trial just for being there. You know what I mean? So there's liberation and so much stuff, in escaping and fleeing and getting out, what have you. But I feel like the power of storytelling, yeah, that definitely resonates, because um, it just it gives an account. It bears witness, like, and it's so powerful. So yeah.
Yeah, man, you talk about the oral histories and the telling, and you know something that I have there's something that I have been thinking about with my own children, and not just like you. I think about oral history of just life or whatever, but even like some of these, even like some of these stories of how we left and how we got over, how we left places that were difficult and were toxic for us, and how that is so important to share and to chronicle and to have and to have that history. So that's great. So here we'll wrap up here in a little bit, in just a moment or two. But I guess I want to have a little bit of fun because there's so much of this is heavy. I guess it's maybe trauma, laughter, fun, or whatever. But one element that we haven't talked about in all of this is Kristina and I both are in interracial marriages. And so we maybe could have, maybe should have gone there of, of what it's like to be married interracially, but I feel like that also maybe centers whiteness a little too much. We try not to center whiteness. But I felt like Harry needed a little bit of help in that interview. Oh my gosh. So something that I want to I guess that some I'll give a charity and a critique, or maybe a couple of critiques. But first of all, my charity is that Prince Harry looked good. Can I just say that? I don't know. I don't know why. I don't know why Prince Harry. I know I'm married interracially, but like that like white men aren't always my type, and so like I'm like, but Prince Harry looked good. So anyway, that's just that was free, and people were like, oh my gosh, okay, I'm getting off this line. I'm getting off this line. She's getting this line. But I mean, he had his little suit on and whatever. And I'm like, I'm not mad at that. I'm not mad at his little lidded shirt or whatever it was that he had that was unbuttoned. I was like, I'm not mad at it. I'm not mad at it at all. But the charity was the charity. I mean, I was giving him charity there, but the charity that I'll give him is that it really sounded like, and given the context, I mean, his family is the colonizers. So I mean, you talk about like, oh yeah, these DNA colonizers. I mean, his family, his bloodline are like the colonizers, and so I mean, it's like, well, I still grew up in a certain family, and white folks will blame their family for everything, but I mean, it's like his family, like he really can blame them for a lot of stuff, and so I understand why he would have probably largely been ignorant about a lot of things. I mean, if there is any white people on earth that maybe, I don't want to say have an excuse, but would have a reason to be ignorant, it would be the royal family. Because I mean, you talk about people colonizing, like that's your granddaddy. Like, like that's your grandma, that's your daddy, like that's whatever. And so they, of course they're not gonna give you their, I mean, you're supposed to let the black people carry you in a chair on their shoulders, like that's like we're the royal family, like that, why, that's normal. So I get that, but I want to be charitable to him in that it sounds like that now.
Mm-hmm.
Now is like he married a black woman. He married a biracial black woman, and it's just like, okay, I'm in here, and I'm trying to do the work. So that's the charity that I'll give him. The critiques that I have for him is like, first of all, I could tell that he did not want to be there. he was he was he was just there. So he like the whole the interview is like 2 hours long. I mean, well, it was like 5 minutes long with all the commercials, but like the whole interview and Harry, I'm thinking, okay, like the first hour is gonna be Meghan, the next hour is gonna be both of them. Why was Harry on that for like 10 minutes? He was in there like, hey, I'm here. Okay, I don't want to talk about this. So my critique, first of all, was that he acted like he was there, so he didn't get fined. The second aspect that I want to critique him on is that I get it that it's his family. Mm-hmm. So it's like he's done the work to recognize the racism.
Yeah.
But there were some points where, and I think that I would be mad, but I can tell that he really loves her. And like, I mean, you can tell just by just I mean, in all of his actions, all these years, but you can tell like he is choosing her much better than his garbage can daddy did to his mom. But anyway, we won't feel that, we won't talk about that tea. Anyway, that's none of my business. I won't talk about the royal family like that. So you can tell that he loves her. But I really felt critical of, hold on a second, like, I get that that's your daddy, and I get that that's your kid's granddaddy and grandma, and like I get that, but like these people are harmful, and like you're giving them too. I felt like he gave his family too much leeway. Anyway, I said a whole lot there, more than I intended to. But anyway, so what do you think, Kristina? What are your charities? What are your graces? What do you think of Prince Harry on the show?
Yeah, my critique on him. My critique on him was probably his grandma, just his, saying how much he has respect for her and how much of a good relationship they had. And I'm just like, fam, like, I get there's the firm and the institution and then grandma and like Meghan said, you got to kind of compartmentalize and stuff like that. But I was just like grandma could have did something. Like, did grandma put in a good word for you? Like did grandma push back on any of the stuff y'all went through? Because otherwise, like, stop. No, you can't be defending grandma because grandma's complicit.
Grandma was complicit.
Listen, and I wonder if how many Zoom calls he gonna have after that interview. So just saying, but yeah, so that was my critique on him as far as the interview was concerned. And I think there is a process element there that of course they're still working through, but he was just really, I mean, yeah, he was just, I think it goes back to what you were saying a second ago, like his family is well, I had mentioned this too, but we both said it. Just his family is the inventors of colonization. And so there's an element there that they think what they're doing is right. And so, but it's not, of course. And so there's this kind of willful, well, more than willful ignorance, but and I think there's might be a process there for him, is that like basically I didn't know the race element exists, but now I do, now that I'm with my wife. And so I think he's still in process, because he's like, man, like they said some really harmful things, and yeah, so that's my I'm still processing that myself. But that was probably my critique for him, is just like you said, he defended his family a lot, in particular his grandma, who I think is complicit, because like she over here signing notes, and like what did she do? Like what note did she sign to like push back on, like they over here having dinner with the news media, Christmas parties, like seriously, like y'all. But I think my charity for him is that like they'll be married for 3 years, even though I think they dated for probably like 18 months, maybe 2 years. I can't remember. But just how quick he recognized the difference, the stark difference of how life was before Meghan and how differently he saw people change and acted towards Meghan now, so he acted on that very quickly. I mean, they've been married for, it'll be 3 years, I think in May 6th or something like that. So the fact that he identified, hey, y'all being kind of racist, and my wife is suffering and we need some help, and y'all not offering us help. So if y'all not gonna offer us help, like, we gotta go, So I applaud him hugely. I think she said something to the fact of, I think they both said like each other saved each other's life. And if he didn't act so quickly, like, she wouldn't be here. But so, yeah, I applaud him for that. I applaud him because, like, sometimes it takes folks like a long time to connect the dots. And so, especially white folks. So I applaud him huge. I applaud him for um, being so proactive. And it seemed like they were proactive in trying to get some resolution, because like I said, it's only been 3 years since they've been married. So I applaud him for recognizing the racism and trying to get his wife out of there. So yeah.
Yes. I mean, for him to be like, and I don't want to over like valorize and be like whatever, but I mean, but really, like, homie put it on the line there. Yeah. I mean, he
it could have been the death. It could have been the death of her.
It literally could have been, and he really, like, put it on the line. It's like, like, I did. It's like I felt sad, as sad as you could feel for like rich people in situations. But when he's like, yeah, we're out here, doing Spotify and Netflix and all this other type of stuff because I'm trying to, get security and stuff for my family, and I'm like, fam, you live down the street from Oprah. You live down the street from Tyler Perry and Oprah and Serena Williams and everything else. Like, how you got a chicken farm at your house? Like, how are you? I mean, like, and so the second moment that hurt is the reason why they're able to have some of that. We're laughing about that, but because of his mom, and that makes you wonder, fam, what did, because I mean, yeah, she a lot of people forget that Lady Diana, she was Lady Diana because she was nobility. She was like, lower tier nobility, but she was nobility nonetheless. So she probably, had a little bit of money and stuff, and she also made money through her charities and different stuff that she did before she died. But that kind of got me. I'm not gonna lie. That pulled at my heart a little bit. That is like, wow, that's what made her put money aside for her kids. And like why, like, I can't. That was too much for me, fam. But girl, it's always good. It's always good to be able to talk to you and everything. So I have one more question before we go. And this is, again, trauma laughter here. But who do you think it was that asked about the baby's skin color? Who do you think it was? So we know that it wasn't. You're killing me. We know that it wasn't. We know that it wasn't Queen Elizabeth
or Grandpa,
and we know that it wasn't Grandpa, which it would have been really on brand for him. And so I knew that it wasn't Grandpa because that's on brand. That's on brand for the Duke of Edinburgh. That's on brand for Prince Philip. It wouldn't have been damaging to him to be like, oh yeah, my Grandpa. Yeah. It was Grandpa that said that. It was Grampy or whatever he calls it. So who do you think was the ones in the royal family that asked about Archie's skin color?
Fred and Gladys. It was Fred and Gladys.
I can't. You're so stupid.
It was Fred, Gladys, and Kate.
I wasn't expecting you to say it. Oh my gosh. Hold on. I'm sitting here laughing, and people are watching this like, why is she going off? Hold on. I wasn't expecting it.
So, if no one knows, Fred and Gladys was a nickname that Prince Charles had for Camilla. And so
Gladys
so we were referencing it from the show The Crown.
from
So
The Crown. Oh my gosh, I should have been ready because I know that you were that ignorant. But I thought that, but I was not. I was genuinely. I'm like, Kristina's gonna be professional on here. Isn't gonna get me rolling talking about Fred and Gladys. But yeah, so Fred and Gladys, at least according to The Crown,
yeah,
show, that was the nicknames. I'm pretty sure that's for real. The nicknames that they had for one another while they were having an affair. So, the Prince of Wales and the Duchess of Cornwall. So you know what?
Yeah.
I was totally camp for, like, whenever we talked about this, like after it happened, I was really, team Fred and Gladys, like, and it probably was them. But now I'm actually starting to wonder if it wasn't Prince William.
Yeah.
And
I think so I listened back to the interview today, and I think there was probably multiple conversations from what it seemed like Harry had said. So I'm putting Fred, Gladys, Will, and Kate in there at different times and stuff like that. So yeah, all four of them.
all of them.
Look,
Anyway,
Kate was watching. William, and Charles was talking, and Camilla was adding her 2 cents in it too. So yeah.
So anyway, trauma laughter for sure, because that was messed up. But anyway, girl, you made me laugh. Hopefully, I can't even wear my glasses anymore. I have literal tears in my eyes because Kristina is so ignorant. Oh my gosh. So anyway, thank you all for tuning in and listening to us, especially here if you tuned in. I mean, if you tuned in these last 15 minutes, and I'm sorry, we were actually acting like we had some sense and discussing this conversation with some level of gravity and whatever, but then we started not have any behavior toward the end here, as it goes sometimes. So anyway, thank you so much for tuning in. We are so happy that you were able to join us. We hope that you will share this, because sharing is caring. Rate, listen, subscribe to the Pass the Mic podcast. Rate, listen, and subscribe to Combing the Roots. Read Black Women Plant Seeds. Like Black Women Plant Seeds on Facebook and Twitter and wherever else that Black Women Plant Seeds exists. Trust Black women, love Black women, support Black women, cherish Black women. So that's all we got for tonight, Pete. Peace out.